So I see a lot of familiar faces, but also new ones. So to the people that just got here for the first time, my name is Jacob. This is Lumos House. We've been doing Lumos House in 4 cities now, so now we're doing San Francisco. What we do is we bring together the most innovative founders, the best VCs and operators, and invite them to fireside chats, dinners, and events. Tonight, we're going to be introducing Andrew, Young, and Raj. We're going to be going over some of the best things and the journey as to how they got to where they are now. So I'll let them take it away. Welcome.
Yeah, Andrew.
So I want to get a sense of who's in the room. So who here is a founder, entrepreneur, CEO? Wow. Okay. All right.
Silicon Valley, or?
Yeah. Who's not a founder but works in tech? And who's not a founder but wants to build a company one day? Okay, cool. Sweet. So some of you might know Raj. He is a Canadian-American entrepreneur. You know, we're kind of...
Yeah, Canadian. Who's Canadian?
Yeah, any Canadians here? Yeah. He's over there. Yeah. And he's founded 2 publicly traded companies. So the first one was Zimride that became Lyft, that I'm sure everybody knows Lyft. The other one, Presto, restaurant tech company that he also took public, I believe, a couple of years ago. And he's currently building Lima and Tribe, and he also hosts a podcast with the founder CEO of Mercury, called The Founders in Arms. And on that pod, you interview founders, you sort of break down their tactics and tips and stuff like that. And so, I'm really excited to chat today. There are very few people in the world that have started 2 publicly traded companies and had 2 exits, and he's doing it again. He's doing it again in a very different space, immigration and sort of the consumer social space. So excited to hear from him, and so many founders in this room. We call this chat 0 to 1 for a reason. We want to break down the tactics, some of the insights that he's used to scale his company, take it public, exit, and how you can sort of adopt the same methods as well. I have a list of programming I really want to get through. But before I do you want to just do a self-introduction, share a bit about your background in your own words?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, first of all, thanks for having me, Andrew, and it's great to see everyone here. Glad to see so many founders out. That's my tribe, right? Literally, it's my tribe, and I love to chat with founders and help founders. It's the only thing I've done in my career is found companies and help founders. So it's really close to my heart. And I don't do a lot of talks like this, honestly. I'm really focused on building, but Andrew's a good friend, and I really respect what all the great events he puts together. So wanted to come out and also get a chance to meet some more new folks. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm happy to help in any way I can. It's a beautiful journey, founding companies. It's a beautiful journey. It can be a lot of ups and downs, but it's something that's very close to my heart. So. All my friends are founders, basically. So I really live the life. I would say in a kind of very deep way, and I love it so much. I'm doing 2 companies at once now, so that tells you something as well.
I want to start with, in the spirit of 0 to 1, I want to start with coming up with ideas. And you've had 4 or more ideas in sort of 4 very different spaces, from mobility to restaurant tech, hospitality, to consumer social, to sort of a true cash flow services business. How do you come up with ideas? And I'd love to hear some anecdotes about how, I believe I heard about you working in a restaurant and all those starting stories.
Yeah. My ideas, there's founders out there who really focus on trying to build a great business first, and then they work backwards from that. What's going to make a great business, and they work backwards, reverse engineer from that goal, right? I'm not like that. I really actually focus more on problems that I experience in my daily life, and think about how to solve that problem and make a business around that. So it's a very different way of doing things, and I would say it's probably a much riskier way of doing things. Because you're trying to build a business around a common problem, right? In the case of Zimride, which became Lyft, it was just getting home from university, which I had my own car, but there were a lot of my classmates didn't have a car. And I was just driving home one day, from it was a long weekend. It was an hour-and-a-half drive from Waterloo to Toronto, if you guys know Canada a little bit. And I had a big van, 7-seater van. It was empty, and I was like, why is my van empty when there's so many people who need to get to Toronto on a Thanksgiving weekend? And that just sparked the idea. It's like, why is transportation so inefficient? Now we're building social networks. You can find out folks you know and trust. And so the idea kind of started with that. Transportation could be a lot more networked. It could be a lot more connected. And this was before the iPhone came out. Facebook had just launched an app store or API. And so you could kind of see it coming, but it wasn't there yet, right? So that's how it started. And for Presto, it was the same. I was having dinner at a restaurant with 7 other MIT grads and Harvard grads, and a lot of great people there. But when it came time to split the check, we couldn't figure out how to do it. It took us an hour to try to figure out how to split this check between 7 of us, and it just became like this bad joke. How many MIT engineers does it take to split a check? And that's how it started. And we, I was like, well, why are restaurants so backwards when all the rest of consumer tech seems to be moving so fast? So it didn't make sense that like restaurants were so far behind the times. So I said, how do I build a company around that, right? And I actually dropped out of my PhD at MIT. I took a job as a waiter to understand how the restaurant business worked and build a company around that key problem that I had. I'm an immigrant too, and I've had, I've been denied for visas. I've been yelled at the border. I've had employees when I was CEO who struggled with their own visa, had to leave the company because they couldn't figure out their visa strategy, had to leave the country, not just the company, the country, because they couldn't figure out, visa strategy. And, I've just seen this story time and again, and for me, it was a problem that I needed to find a way to solve. So I built an organization, Lima, around that, which helps people get skilled visas, green cards, etc. And then Tribe is another one that we're building what we hope will be one day the world's best group chat app. And I actually lead a lot of group chats. I love group chats. I think it's like the best form of the internet. Where you can actually talk to people you know and trust, and you can get to know them over time. It's not just a moment in time; it's over time, which is a big difference. And because you see the same people over again, you get to know them, and you can really build a lot of trust and friendships. So because I experienced, I'm like, I used WhatsApp, I'm like, this is not really good, and then Telegram and all the existing services, I'm like, I think there's a much better app out there. And so that's why we started building Tribe as well. So all of them came from my own personal, and I think that preserves the passion for the company. It's not just about the money, it's not just about building a good business. Some people get off on that. I don't really get off on that much.
Wait for that to pass.
Yeah. I've programmed the planes to go, Exactly. It adds emphasis. It's like a bolt, Yeah.
So if we get like really tactical into it, just because I think a few of the folks in this room are curious. So like Zimride, you realized there was an opportunity to use technology to pool people for rides from a destination or to a destination. And you figured out there's an opportunity there. How did you go and like build it? Did you grab like a fellow classmate and can we build an MVP? And from that point, how did you know it was going to be, one, how did you know it was going to be widely adopted? And then two, how did you know it had the potential to be a business and potentially like a venture scale business?
Yeah, I think when we start the companies, we have no idea it's going to be a business. And really, I mean, it seems very risky from the very beginning. And most people you talk to about the idea will tell you there's no business here, right? The first question people ask you, how do you make money? And you have no idea. So the first thing I do in general is I go talk to users. I talk to people who are experiencing the problem, who are not me. I'm not just building it for myself. I want to build it for other people. So in the case of Presto, I actually I went around Boston, door to door, actually, at restaurants. I walked in. I said, "Can I talk to the owner? Can I talk to the manager?" And I pitched them this idea of a tablet on the table that you could use to order and pay. And I literally went around winter in Boston, for hours, just going door to door in restaurants, because you could find those customers there, and you could find potential users. It's the same with the immigration. We just reached out to our network and said, who needs help? With visas and green cards, it turned out a lot of people we knew needed help, and so we started solving those problems. So I think the general way of starting a company is not just going to build a product. It's actually talking to people, getting feedback from real users who may have the same problem, and learning that way. But even if you do that, like many times, you know, the answer won't reveal itself for many years to come. I mean, in the case of Zimride and Lyft, I mean, like, yes, everyone understood that carpooling, you know, was a problem. You know, there was a Craigslist carpooling service that was very popular back in the day. You know, now nobody uses it, I think, or it's or maybe for long haul, you know, drives. But, you know, no one really thought there was a business to be made. I mean, even with Airbnb, there was couch surfing, but nobody thought there was a business around it, right? So it was really hard to you know, draw the line between a service that seems kind of free and cheap between something that actually people would pay for, which is a professionalized service. So actually you could see that kind of thread between like even Zimride, Lyft and the immigration company and Tribe is like, there's always things that exist in this space, but they're not very good. And you can make a better product, you know, for a premium cost or whatever it is, and actually people are willing to pay because they want a better service.
We had coffee a few weeks ago, and you said something really smart that kind of inspired me. It's the idea of catching a wave. Mm-hmm. And you said something along the lines of you have to pick an area, have conviction in it, and then just sort of like be patient and like build and be the expert in that space and be the go-to person, and eventually you'll catch the big wave. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate a little bit on that if you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think you know, that is the real, one of the big challenges of entrepreneurship is like people get passionate about certain areas, but the world may not be ready for their passion. You know, the world may not be ready. You know, when Elon Musk started Tesla, the world wasn't ready for electric cars, right? When he started SpaceX, it wasn't ready for sending rockets. So like, the world isn't ready for your ideas necessarily at that time, but that's where that passion can take you through 5-10 years, where the world actually becomes ready. You know, for that. You know, in Presto's case and Lyft's case, it took over 5 years to reach product market fit. Right? Over 5 years. So that is not a short time. Like nowadays, incubators try to get you to product market fit within 3 months. But you know, I'll tell you, the journey can be a lot longer than that. And there's often pivots along the way, and you know, there could be major, you know, founder changes and team changes, and you know, you could have a pandemic in the middle. You could have all sorts of things that can happen, you know, on the journey towards product market fit. But that's where that initial passion carries you along, because you really like working on it. You really feel like something needs to happen in this space. You know, I was watching a little bit of the Tesla thing last night. I mean, you know, they're trying to build humanoid robots, right? The world isn't ready for humanoid robots now, right? But you know, 5-10 years from now, maybe they will be, right? So it's really a passion for an entrepreneur's passion for a space that carries them. And one thing I look for when I invest, as an angel investor, I look for true passion for a specific space. And even though the market may not be ready now, is that person going to stick to it for 5-10 years? Versus someone who's trying to build a business. Remember, if you want to build a business, you're going to quickly abandon a space that doesn't look like it's going to make money, right? There's no business here. I can build a business in a different space, so I'll just go to a different space. But and that is actually, you could be successful doing it that way. And there are many good examples of companies that have been built that way. And they can be very profitable businesses, good to invest in. But it's just not my style. So, you know, I don't gravitate towards that.
Who here runs like a venture-backed business? Like you raise capital? Raise your hand. Okay. And who here doesn't? Like the sort of like the bootstrap agencies, services, or solopreneur model? Cool. It's about 30%, 60%. So you kind of have both. You have a traditionally like service business that it doesn't need to raise venture capital because it's immediately profitable, and then you have you know, the group chat, which historically has raised a ton of money. Like how do you think about what is the right time to like raise, or whether or not you should raise capital, and should that capital come from VCs versus like angels?
Yeah. In general, I think there's been a culture of Silicon Valley over the last 15 years of optimizing too much for raising capital. It's becoming like a default. You know, like this is the only way I'm going to succeed as a business. And I really disagree with that. I think, you know, there's some businesses, if you're building humanoid robots, probably would need capital, right? But, you know, if you're building a SaaS company, you don't necessarily need capital. There are many different ways of financing. And I think the incubator system that exists today it's really optimized towards raising capital. It really kind of teaches people how to build a business that raises capital on demo day, and then like, hopefully they could translate that into raising more capital. And I think it's a little bit dangerous because you get on this treadmill where you're like, A, then when am I going to get to B? When am I going to get to C? And it's like almost like you're playing a video game and you're trying to get to the highest level. And you think the level, the lower your letter is, whatever, F or G, you've made it. Then you go public and you're happy, right? That's not the way it works, right? Building a business is about having happy users and having good gross margins and making profits ultimately and growing profits. And I think the fundamentals of business building are sometimes missing in tech companies, and that leads to a lot of weird behavior. And the problem is not just the founders that are, who have this culture, not just the incubators, but also the VCs. The VCs have, an incentive to raise a bunch of capital themselves and then plow that capital into companies, because that's when they start earning fees. They earn money when they invest capital in companies, and they'll go tell LPs that, like, hey guys, AI is going crazy. Please give me some money so I can help, get you involved with AI, right? And so everyone is involved in this thing. Everyone is involved. But I'll tell you who loses. Who loses is 70, 80, 90% of venture-backed founders, right? Because they raise too much money, or they raise, money to the point that they cannot get an exit. They cannot, even if they are profitable, the founders themselves won't make those profits. The employees won't make any money, except for the salary. So the 70, 80, 90% of venture-backed companies don't have any meaningful exit, and those founders will have spent years of their lives, without doing that. But if they'd built a profitable business with a different model, maybe they'd built it with angel money and an LLC type of business, they could actually take the profits home, with their team, and them and the team could do very well, very, very well, life-changing type of outcomes. So I actually think that's a better way. If you're a tech founder, that's actually a better way to build a business in the beginning, because it teaches you the fundamentals of business, right? That is the fundamental of business. The fundamental of business is not A, B, C, D, right? Like that is not the Series A and all these things. That's a very unique type of like Silicon Valley model that has sort of like become a culture, and it's really something that most tech founders who are not business savvy, including me when I started, they gravitate towards too much.
You mentioned a concept that I really like, and you mentioned it a few times, like business fundamentals. And so when I think of that, I think of like, you got to make profit and you need customers. Like how else would you elaborate on like what is solid, a good business with good fundamentals looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned big one, profit, but not just profit, also cash, right? Like, are you collecting cash before you have to pay it, right? How do you pay your employees, right? Do you have the cash to pay your employees every month regularly, right? Do you have a good sales cadence? Do you have a good sales funnel? Are you building a good pipeline? Do you have a probability adjusted model to some degree to know what percentage of your pipeline will convert at every step? Like these are business fundamentals that actually are not taught, I think, in most incubators. I think founders need to learn sometimes just through the school of hard knocks and go out and sell themselves and learn how customers behave. Customers are human beings, right? They're fickle, right? Some people will say yes, some people will no, some people will say not now. You have to learn that. You have to learn that cadence, and you have to learn what it's like to talk to a lot of different customers with different types of backgrounds. One thing I've also learned as a founder that I didn't really understand when I started was just the power of market sizes. The market size makes a big difference to your life as a founder, right? If you're working in a big market, it's actually relatively easy to get to a certain scale, right? You might not get to a huge scale because there's tons of competition, but getting to a certain scale is quite easy. If you're working in a small market, it's okay if there's less competitors, but if there's a lot of competitors, you can never, no matter how hard you work, you might not be successful. And that's why I don't agree a lot with a lot of this like hustle culture and like, hey, work hard for the sake of working hard, because actually the direction you point is actually very important. I've seen if I look at my peers, founders, right, who started around 15 years ago, vastly different outcomes, vastly different outcomes. How much is correlated to talent? Not very much. How much is correlated to market size? Very high. So like, that is actually a big determining factor, right? And yes, luck is a factor, but it's actually not a very big factor. It's like you can deterministically build a good business. Like it's if you follow the right playbook, it's not just like taking a shot in the dark, and you get better as you go because you learn more things, and that's why like certain repeat founders kind of like do really well because they've learned everything about how to make it work. So yeah, there's a lot of fundamentals. I mean, even just the fundamentals of hiring a team and like managing them and motivating a team, that's very important as well. The fundamentals of like getting feedback from customers and acting on that. So, but you will learn that if you build a business that's structured right from the beginning. But it's harder to learn that if your incentives are wrong. Yeah.
For the folks who are hearing this and they're like, I still want to raise like a big round venture capital, and you invest and you sort of know the space very well. What are some things that actually let's see who here is like a pre-seed company? Pre-seed, and then let's say seed. Who's a seed stage? Any Series A folks? Series B? For folks pre-seed to seed, what do investors look for and not look for? What are some misconceptions that people think they need to show in their slide deck that actually like investors don't care about?
Yeah, I think when people fundraise, they should always be optimizing for finding the right investor for them versus trying to sell investors who may not care about their space, and which is very different. It's almost like it's pure matchmaking, right? It's not really like it's called a pitch. It shouldn't be called a pitch. It should be called matchmaking. You're looking for the right fit, and the right fit of an investor will have been thinking about your problem before you met them, right? And they'll be like, oh, there's a problem there, and I really want to get involved somehow, right? And they know your problem. You could say like maybe 20 words, and they'll be like, yeah, I get it. I get exactly what you're trying to solve. So I think there's a lot of focus on like what should my deck say and all this stuff, but it's actually just finding the right fit out there. And what's difficult about investing fundraising is that just there's tons of rejection. There's a lot of people who say no, and I probably raised 20 rounds or something. Like I've done a lot, right? And so it's like and every round 99% rejection, right? So probably got thousands of no's, right? And it's difficult. Like it's psychologically difficult. We're not wired as human beings to get that much rejection, and there's a lot of people who it's hard to like not take it personally, right? Like why would you not get this? This is amazing, blah blah blah, right? And then you're like, well, did I not explain it properly? Then you start questioning yourself, right? And questioning the business. Like, is this going to survive? All this stuff, right? Which is why I get back to have good unit economics, have good cash flow, have good profits, right? Because then you don't care too much about what investors think, and investors will find you and beg you to invest. So that's what typically happens. But if you're playing the game where you're trying to raise, I think you need to have a very clear story. You need to show how big the market is, show how good the unit economics is, show that you understand the fundamentals of business. But most things for a VC investor, what they're looking for is something that could become worth billions of dollars. So you got to tell that story, right? And then you got to tell them why are you the right person to build that, build that type of product. If they believe that this could be a big company, and they believe that you are capable of making it a big company, that's all the two things they need. They don't need anything else. And then the rest of it is just like timing and luck and stuff. Like you're going to get investors who might believe that, but they've done 3 investments that year. And they won't tell you that. They have no incentive of telling you that. Like they won't say anything. They'll be like, yeah, it's too early for me. Something like that. That's some BS, right? So like, that's why you should never take anything an investor says personally. Even their feedback you should not take personally. So like, or even take it seriously. Like, if they give like feedback or say, oh, I don't think you have this and that, then you're like, whoa, is this guy? He's been very experienced person. He's on the boards of all these companies. Should I believe them? And the answer is no, right? Because they know nothing, almost nothing about you and your business, and very little. Like they met you for like 20, 30 minutes, so they know almost nothing, right? I think it's very hard for founders to do that, right? Very hard for founders to ignore feedback from very experienced people, and go, and really just index more on like what users are telling them, what they're learning in the market. It's difficult for founders to do that. It's difficult for me. I would say it took me probably up to 8 years, before I could I felt like I was really kind of nailing it, like on like my day-to-day execution. And it's a long journey, a lot of learning. Hopefully, some of the things I'm telling you today can shorten some of that, the initial pain of like being on the steep part of the learning curve, you know. But yeah.
Any VCs in the room? I know one, two.
I'm so sorry. You know? I invest too. I mean, you know, angel checks, but they're very different from a VC model. Yeah.
You've talked before about like founder-friendly VCs, and I think you've mentioned that you think YC is like the most founder-friendly VC. Can you talk about why, and can you talk about some of the traits, characteristics of VCs that truly sort of care about the founders and want to help them succeed in the right ways?
Yeah, I mean, there are VCs out there who will back the founders no matter, you know, come hell or high water, and want you to succeed, whether it's this company or next company, right, or whatever. They want you, they back you because you're a founder and you're doing, you know, risky things, and they support that. There are a good number of, I would say, maybe 20% of VCs are like that, right? Not like 50, but I would say 20, right? Most other VCs would be more focused on their own careers and their own outcomes. And the minute you hit some challenges, they're off to the, you know, they're going to invest in 10 companies and they hope one of them succeeds, right? So if you looks like you're not going to be that one, their incentives are to not spend time with you and to go, you know, either go find that one or to spend time with the one that's going to be successful, right? And you know, there are some VCs that I think will do a good job of being founder friendly. I think YC is the best one. Andreessen, in my experience, has been pretty founder friendly as well. You know, and there's a few others that are really good and you know, will really support the founder through thick and thin. They're hard to find though, and the problem for founders is that some people who appear founder friendly are often not when it comes to a difficult time. And you really have to reference check your VCs. It's really important to do that. Talk to other founders. Talk to every founder they've worked with, like not just one. Like talk to every single one. It's worth it because you want to know what happened in that one scenario where interests were not aligned, right? The standard VC terms make it such that VCs actually have a lot of power when things are not going well. Like they actually can block you from raising a round that might be lower than your current round, right? They can block you from selling the company. That's the standard VC terms, and actually, I don't believe those should be the standard, but you know, I think founders have not yet figured out how to like negotiate those away, but that's why it's really important that you know you have VCs that you trust, because you know probably if you're not an experienced founder, you're not going to have the leverage to negotiate those away, but you know the best you can do is find a founder or find a VC that is truly founder friendly.
I feel like we're in the era where a lot of VCs have like media companies, or they are sort of hybrid media companies, and there are a lot of VCs out there who have like big Twitter followings and massive personal distribution. I feel like you might have a hot take on this, but any perspective on like let's call them loud VCs, and is there any correlation to success or how founder friendly they are?
Yeah, I don't think there is a huge correlation. This is some marketing strategies, you know, that some VCs use to get out there and build a personal brand. I'm not sure if there is a correlation there. I will say there's been amazing VCs I've met who have no social media presence, who I've worked with, who have done really good. There's definitely, you know, blowhards out there. You know, they're founder blowhards too. You know, there's like people out there who talk a lot, a big game, but they don't actually do much. It's really it's hard to know. It's not really correlated, I would say. I think the only way you can tell is like what happens in a boardroom, you know, like what happens behind the scenes. And you got to talk to founders are actually pretty open with each other, very open. There is like a sort of community of founders, like there's almost like a pride of being a founder, and you would tell other founders like, you know, exactly what happened. And actually, you know, I'm part of the YC community, you know, they have great investor reviews, you know, and you know, people are held to account on those investor reviews, right? So you know, you can see that there's bad behavior out there with some investors, and founders are very happy to share that with each other, which is why you know a lot of VCs consider it a reputation game, and in some cases when things are not going well, they'll like to kind of like gently part ways, you know, and you know with the company versus like blow up the bridge. But there's certainly VCs out there who are happy to burn the bridge as well.
I want to talk a little bit about scaling the team or scaling the company. So let's say you just raised a round, you're looking for your first hire, non-founder hire. How do you think through that? Who's that person? And maybe there's different scenarios of like a B2B business and then more of a consumer business, but how do you think about that?
Yeah, the first hires you make are really important. They set the tone for your culture. Those people later will have like sort of like founder status within the company. They will be kind of known as like one of the early guys or girls, and they'll be seen as like very important people within the company later on, right? If it works out. And so it's almost like finding a co-founder in some ways, in that you're finding someone who has all the founder traits. Maybe they weren't there early enough to be a co-founder, but they at the same time they're the type of person who, if you left for a week, that they would move the company forward by themselves in a significant way, right? And they would do that, right? Because you've seen them behave like that. So I think that's really important to see like that kind of behavior. The way I look at great founders in general, and people I've worked with who are great co-founders, is that they never stop pushing, and they will push me, but they'll also push the team, to greater heights, to move the ball forward. And actually, having hired big teams before, I will say like 99% of people are not like that. Like when you hire employees, at some point, like the bigger the company you are, the people who are attracted to that are people who are more like rule followers and direction followers, and they won't grab the ball and take it with them, because that's not rewarded in most companies. In most companies, you gotta like don't stick out too much, right? So I think the early hires have to be the people who can move the company forward even without you there. It's basically like a co-founder. And they have a level of risk appetite too. I mean, they have to have a risk appetite to join your 2-person startup or whatever, right? So the good thing actually about co-founders and early hires is that it is self-selecting to some degree, right? People who join you at that stage have to be people who like it, otherwise they'll never survive.
How do you screen for that in interviews? What are the 1 or 2 questions you like to ask to find that type of person?
What I look for is people who ask me a lot of questions. And like they've done a ton of research in advance. They're like come in and they're like, it's almost like they're interviewing you, and it's a very strong correlation between those people and good founders and good like early hires. If you go to a meeting and people are like waiting for you to ask them questions, that's actually not a good sign. It should be like they have so many questions that the meeting doesn't stop because they're like keep asking you so many questions, and they're actually quizzing you and challenging you on your own thinking. Oh, why do you think like a group chat app is actually makes any sense in this age, right? Like, okay, well, I said all these reasons. Oh, well, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. And like they're questioning you about everything, and they're doing it from a place of like wanting to really understand, and not because they're like skeptical anything will work, but because they really want to understand what your vision is. And there tends to be also just a natural interest in what you're doing, in like the actual idea. I would say there's 2 different types of people. There's people who join you because they want to work with you. The people who join you because they want to work on your idea, right? You should just try to understand what type of person it is, who's what their motivations are, right? And those are the key questions I would ask them. Is like, what are your professional goals? Where do you want to be? Do you want to be a founder one day? Do you want to do you want to be part of a team that wins? Some people just want to be part of a team that wins. So I think it's good to understand that, so you understand what kind of hire that would be and how to motivate them going forward.
A bit of a pivot, but with Presto, Zimride, Lyft. Can you talk a bit about the toughest moments you've had, maybe near-death moments where you were like, we're not going to make it, or like an investor? I've heard this a lot. An investor is like, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
What are those anecdotes, and like how did you navigate past that?
Yeah. So near-death moments are very common, especially in VC-backed companies, because you're always running close to the edge. At Presto, we had a lot, many near-death moments, probably at least 5 to 10, which is a lot for a company. Many founders talk to over like 15-year careers will maybe have 1 or 2, but 5 to 10 is a lot. And I think we've had. I would say the one big thing with Presto, we sold big enterprise deals. So like those very binary, right? Either you get the deal or you don't get the deal, right? And so it could be a $10, $20 million deal per year, but it's a very binary outcome. It's a little bit like an election, right? Election is also very binary, and it creates a lot of stress, right? You're like, oh, election's coming up. It could be this or it could be that, right? And then every day is like the probability shifts a little bit, but you never know until you know, right? So it can be like that. I remember at Presto, we ran a 2-year pilot with Applebee's. Free pilot. We made no money on it. We had a small team in a house in Palo Alto. like this, 30 people working out of the house, a much smaller house than this. People were doing calls in the bathrooms. You know, there was the basement was used as a QA lab. You know, there was so it was a small company, and we had no big deal. We had no revenue at all, and we're trying to get this contract with Applebee's, and it was us and one other competitor, another company based in Texas, and they had a better product. They were around for longer. They were more experienced. We were a bunch of young kids, right? And we were in a house. We didn't even have a proper office. They had a proper office. They had more customers. They had everything, right? And at some point, in the deal, we're competing, and then Applebee's calls us and says, "We'll pick the other guys." After 2 years, and we had no money, and so the company was dead. I told everyone, like, guys, I don't know. I think we're done. Without this deal, we have nothing. We're not working on any other deals, because at that time in the market, no one had even adopted tablets anywhere, really in the space. So, I remember those moments, like going into the office and telling everyone, it hasn't worked out. 2 years worth of work, it's gone nowhere. And then, we pulled together a team, and we're like, we have to get this back somehow. So then we started calling everyone we knew at, all the Applebee's franchisees, and we put together a counter proposal. We made a counter pitch, and we got a few champions to turn over the deal, actually. And so we ended up winning the deal. And then after we won the deal, we got a big investment from Intel. And so all these good things kind of happened, back to back as well. So we went from being almost dead, to having tens of $1 million contract, plus a massive investment from Intel. And so it was a big turnaround. And I'd like to tell you the story was over after that, but there were a lot more downs and ups. We could be here for days talking about this stuff.
How do you keep the team motivated? When this is so different, but when I was at Facebook and Google, and we went through multiple rounds of layoffs, and whenever there's an announcement of a layoff, everyone just starts looking for jobs. Everyone just starts looking for the next thing. In your scenario, how do you keep the team motivated? How do you keep yourself motivated and optimistic?
Yeah. Well, I think layoffs are very difficult culturally, and I tried to not do layoffs casually, and I didn't do it. I did a couple rounds of layoffs at Presto, but then I didn't do it for 8 years after that. And I found, you can, for example, we hit the pandemic, and I didn't do layoffs. I did a salary cut instead, a temporary salary cut where we all took lower salaries, and then we paid people back after the pandemic was over. And I thought that was more better because people pulled together culturally. They're like, we're in this together. And I think it was a good move for the team to feel like they're part of a whole versus we're throwing. Once they feel like you're cutting some people loose, everyone feels like they're dispensable, and then people start looking for jobs and stuff like that. So I think layoffs are very toxic. I think Silicon Valley needed, especially the big tech companies, they needed a retrench. But the way to retrench, if you're going to retrench, do it all in one shot, not do these multiple rounds of layoffs. And if you do multiple rounds, then you're really struggling because the team is always like, what's next? Am I next, right? And it breeds a bad culture. And I think that's why a lot of the new startups coming up without that culture of laying off lots of people are actually in a better position than a lot of these incumbent companies who have been through these multiple rounds. Because people just feel like, if they feel dispensable, of course they will leave. They won't feel like it's a trusted partnership.
There's one last thing I want to touch on in terms of leadership and team building. I think I heard about you. You do this. You build this constitution for your team. You write this constitution to keep your team focused. Mm-hmm. Can you tell everyone about your method and how what is the impact of that?
Yeah, that's something that worked for me really well. Is writing down my ideas and beliefs over what our North Star should be, what our mission should be, what our values should be. Writing it on a memo, and then institutionalizing that memo as a constitution for the company. So at Presto, I wrote a memo called Boost and Boast, which I treated as our North Star. I said, look, there's a lot of noise in the market. We win deals, we lose deals. There's VC funding, no VC funding. Competitors are doing this. But I don't want you to think about any of that. I only want you to think of two things, Boost and Boast. What does Boost mean? Boost means we're going to be maniacally focused about increasing value for our customers, of boosting them up. And we're going to instrument that, we're going to measure that, and we're just going to measure how much value and how much ROI are we delivering for these customers, for our restaurant enterprise customers. And then Boast is about, are we telling those stories about how we're adding value to new customers? And are we doing that just really well, over and over again, relentlessly, because actually engineers don't like boasting, and so boasting is something that I had to explicitly talk about because otherwise people would not do it. And if you don't do it, you won't win sales deals, right? So, so boost and boast, I said, if we just do these two things well, we're going to succeed as a company. Everything else is just noise, it's luck. We don't worry about things we can't control. And then I also wrote like four key aspects of our mission. I wrote that. We painted it on the walls as well, so we could keep everyone focused on what are we about as a company. And then you have to reinforce it with people. Every new employee had to read the memo. I would quiz them on it, and like the new hire onboarding. I would mention it in every step of like every memo I sent out, every speech. Like I wanted everyone to understand like this is what's really important. And before we did that, there used to be a lot of thrash in the company. Like there used to be like, oh, this is happening? Should we worry? This is happening. Should we worry? There was a lot of like water cooler talk and rumors and things like that. But after we did that, people calmed down and they knew what to focus on, and they knew what we should really drive towards. It really helped, I think. I would recommend everyone write a constitution. I even wrote like a constitution for myself, like how to deal with Raj, and this was part of the memos I shared with the company. It's like, just so you know, Raj has some quirks. Here's all the quirks, and here's the way I like to work. I like written, don't interrupt me while I'm working on something. Like there's just small things like that are unique to the way I work. And I just published a memo, and it just calms people down. Yeah. And so I really recommend everyone do that.
And you built Zimride when it was remote, right? It's like your team was fully remote, and so I'm sure that kind of stuff helped productivity and leadership, team management generally.
Yeah. This was before this, but I didn't meet Logan, who is my co-founder, and he was based in Santa Barbara. So until many months of working together, and it's actually quite improbable, that it works that way. But we just got along really well, and he's still a good friend of mine, And it's that's another thing. Your co-founders could become good friends.
Yeah. Well, we're going to open it up to Q&A, but in our final moments, I'd love for you to share some details on your podcast, Founder in Arms with Imad, and what you're building with Tribe and Lima, and how people should reach out to you to learn more about all the things you do.
You're asking me how people should reach out? Yeah. So you can reach out. My email is raj@limadream.com. If you know anyone who needs immigration help, let me know. We've helped a lot of people already. Tribe is a new group chat app. It's Tribe Chat Pro on the App Store. Check it out. And we have a Tribe for our Founders in Arms podcast, which you're welcome to join. All the new episodes are published there. There's a group of people talking about the podcast. So that's a great way to reach me as well, is on Tribe. And I'm always looking for feedback. We're trying to do something very unique there. So I'd love to be in touch, and hope to see you on one of these various platforms.
Cool.
It's raj@limadream.com. Yeah, Lima Dream. Lima Dream.
I can send it out after as well. But we also have like this immigrant builder group chat. I'll send that out after as well.
That's right.
We're going to do Q&A, but before that, just a round of applause for Raj for joining us today. Okay, so we got some Slido questions. I'm going to start with this, and then we can just let people go ad hoc. Which is number one? Right. Any thoughts on Travis Kalanick?
He is a very impressive founder, and CEO. I think he accomplished some amazing things at Uber, and I think actually the funny thing is he actually moved to the restaurant space after that, so cloud kitchens. But obviously, there are some things you would do that I wouldn't do, just a different style. I think, the Lyft management, the Lyft co-founders have a very different brand. It's a much nicer brand, a much friendlier and cuddlier brand than Uber. Different companies have gone different directions. Uber's expanded really remarkably to a lot of, new markets, and, they have the Uber Eats product as well. So, I think, they've done some cool things. I'm kind of curious to see what Travis does next. I hope he's going to still be active.
What do you wish you had done differently in the first 2 years of Lyft, Zimride Lyft?
Yeah, so I was there for the first year, and then I started Presto, and then you know, we were doing something that was very risky, right? Which is like trying to build this, we started building a carpooling app on the Facebook App Store, and hoping that would get some traction, which we managed to get some traction. So, and I think Facebook actually funded us right after that, so which was great. I think we did a lot of things. I mean, for an early stage startup, we did a lot of things right. One thing is obviously we could have started working together much earlier versus we were pretty much a remote team, way before remote was cool. This was back in 2007, 2008. And I think figuring out business model is very important. For a while we thought selling to universities might be a good idea. I think it turned out to be not so good idea. Uber kind of came out with this ride hailing. But the truth is the iPhone wasn't even really popular then, so it would have been hard for us to do that. So again, this was a type of thing where you have to stick around long enough to catch the wave.
There's a really interesting question here that's, I'll read it word for word. Sometimes we make cool things before we understand how they make money. How long do you pursue an idea before it's clear that you don't know how to monetize? So if there's like a side project that gets a ton of traction, but there's no profits coming in, how long do you do that before considering making it a business or shutting it down?
I mean, as long as you like it and as long as you can, right? Both those things have to be true. You have to still like doing it, and then you still have to be able to fund it, right? Like I wouldn't go I wouldn't starve because you're working on this thing. Right? You still need to maintain a basic lifestyle. But if you're able to do it and you still like doing it, and keep doing it, I would say focus on things that could become big one day. If you still have to predict there will be a wave, right? For example, for group chats, I think they will become big one day. I mean, they're already big today, but I think they'll be even much bigger. So I have this view that group chats are going to become much more standard, and they're going to be much more professionalized. So that's just my view. People could disagree with that, and it's very unclear at this moment. I saw when Elon Musk started SpaceX, he thought there was less than a 5% chance, it would be successful. But if you love it, if you truly love working on it, and you're able to fund it, whether through your own means or through customers or through investors, then why would you not work on it? I mean, that's what the fun thing is about working on startups, is that something is uncertain, and you have the chance to make it a reality. And if you make it a reality, you could change a lot of things in the status quo.
Cool. So we can take 3 questions from the crowd. I mean, your hand was up first, so we'll go with you.
So for angel investing, I always look for great founders. Founders, I think who are very passionate about their space, who know a lot. There's certain spaces that I know also better than others. I actually have a good background in AI, voice AI, computer vision, and I've invested in those companies quite a bit. I also like consumer products in general. So consumer is not a sexy area for investment these days, but I actually believe consumer markets are very big. So going back to that point about okay, well, how do you build a good business to consumer? You have to survive long enough to reach some level of product market fit. But once you hit product market fit, the businesses can be very big. I think I think you're giving a talk soon with the OnlyFans guy, right? You mentioned that. Yeah, that's an example of a business that's consumer, is fully bootstrapped, it did very well. So, but I think consumer is underlooked by a lot of investors. It also makes sense that a lot of founders don't want to work on consumer because SaaS products, B2B products are a lot more deterministic. It's more clear that, I can have even a small business in the space. But I just like consumer products. I plan to only be working on consumer products myself.
There's actually one other thing I forgot to touch on, which is you mentioned you like to go premium. So even with Lima, it's a premium service. Yeah. How do you think about how did you come to that sort of decision, and what are the other alternatives you considered?
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways to disrupt the market, right? One is make a better product with a premium price, or make a cheaper product that could get more volume, right? Those are generally the main 2 ways of disrupting any existing market. And I like making great products. I like making the best product in the space. So as a product guy myself, I rather go that direction, where I go for for maybe lower volume, but higher pricing, higher quality. Some people who are maybe good at operations or good at like manufacturing or good at, like making lots of something, right? They might go for the lower cost model where they, they sell something that is higher volume. It's like the fast food model, right? Because you can either make the best burger and become like a Michelin star restaurant, or you can make like a good enough burger for low cost to become McDonald's, right? So that example is, McDonald's is obviously a much bigger business than fine dining restaurants, right? So you have to make sure that the fine dining restaurant can actually do well. I will say that there are products in consumer now which are generally following this model, right? So like the makers of ragu, the pasta sauce, just sold for billions of dollars. It's like a much more expensive pasta sauce, right? There's the Yeti, thermos, is it? Well, yeah, something like that, right? It's like $300 or something. There's like a big ice cooler as well that's like also very expensive. That's like, there's premium products. iPhone is an example of a premium product. I mean, Nokias were everywhere. They're $100, right? $200. Now we don't think anything about spending $1,200 for a phone, right? Like, $1,000, $1,200. That's the standard price of a new iPhone, right? And so, again, there's this dichotomy between low-cost model, which again you could argue is an Android, right? And then you have the premium product in the space.
I have one question over there. You had a question? Yeah.
Corey, co-founder CEO of Retreats and Venues. Question for you. What do you think your biggest 3 superpowers are as an entrepreneur?
Interesting. I've actually never thought about this. I don't know if a superpower kind of like implies that you're much better than other entrepreneurs, maybe in a certain area. And I'm not sure, because actually it's hard for entrepreneurs to compare them with each other, because every space is so different. Every moment in time is different. I couldn't compare myself to an entrepreneur from the 80s, for example, right? So it's also not visible. It's not like you could see Superman flying in the air. It's like, oh, clearly he can fly. But like you see a company doing well, you don't know why it's doing well, right? So I would say in general, the things that I'm generally good at relative to other people I've worked with, are, I tend to care a lot about product, so I focus a lot about product and user experience. I think I'm decent at sales as well, like being able to convince people to do whatever, and I think I have a good understanding of like macro stuff, like how something fits into like a larger picture. I have a background in engineering, but also economics. And so the economics background helps me kind of think about that. I also think I have a combination between left brain and right brain, where I'm like fairly artistic as well, or I like art. And that's also kind of unusual for an engineer. There are a lot of engineers who are good artists as well. But if you find that combination, it gives you some level of advantage on product design, just crafting a beautiful experience for your user. Whereas there's some engineers who are like, I would say someone like Bill Gates, who are just amazing engineers, right? And they do really well at that, and they really love it. And I would say like, I can do okay, but I don't really love it as much as someone like that. So,
Cool. We'll take one more question, and then I don't know if you'll be around, but you can ask him in person. Who do I pick? All right, over there in the pink shirt.
Hey, Raj, thank you for everything. I guess would love to hear your thoughts more on sort of investment when it comes to being a founder looking for investments. I feel that it's one of those things that no one really talks about, and it can be a trap. So do you have any heuristics or red flags that you've seen from the founder perspective that we should look out to when deciding whether or not we should take investment? Would love to hear your thoughts on pre-seed, seed, seed.
oh, you mean like red flags about investors? Oh, I see. So I would say if you have any doubts at all, it's probably a red flag about an investor, right? Yeah, any doubts at all. Like if someone's not getting back to your emails, if someone is like asking questions that don't make sense, if someone is like, maybe they've invested in a competitor and then they're saying, oh yeah, I'm also looking to make investment in you. Like if you have any doubts at all, it's probably not good. Remember, I think only 20% of investors are good. So like the chances are it's not a good investor, right? So you have to be really, really convinced it is a good investor. Like there can be no doubt. for you to actually think it's a good investor, right? So, you know, as you're getting to know people, you know, you'll get the chance to see everything about them, right? Like you'll see how they act in different situations. The investment process is somewhat long. It's like, you know, a month of diligence or, you know, something like that. Sometimes for bigger checks, right? For smaller checks, it could be just a meeting. For small checks, it doesn't matter that much. For bigger checks, it matters more. And you can see how they act in diligence, what the diligence process is, how are they about giving you feedback, how are they, you know, do they seem like they're pulling for you, or do they seem like they're playing some other game? You know, because sometimes people just talk to entrepreneurs like, you know, just as a game, like, you know, they call it warehousing of deals, where they'll just like come up with a list of deals that they're talking to show that they're doing work, right? And sometimes they use those deals to go and raise money. They'll be like, hey, like, here's a bunch of cool founders that, you know, I've talked to in the last, you know, few weeks and months, and now you should give me some money so I can invest in some of them. And you have no idea that's going on, right? So there's, you know, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you feel any kind of like question marks, and every time I have felt a question mark, it's turned out to be that something has gone wrong. Like, there's been people who are clearly just meeting with us to get competitive intelligence. Well, this happens all the time. You know, VCs, as one of their value adds, is like they go out and get competitive intelligence for their portfolio companies. You know, so and they have no qualms about doing that generally. I mean, most of, you know, there probably someone like Andreessen would be, but like, again, 80% of VCs would not. And I've had that happen to me from some very well-known VCs in Silicon Valley, like some of the top 5, I would say. So again, like you have to just be quite paranoid, I would say, about especially for big checks, you know. So which is why I think this whole process is somewhat fraught. But you know, again, if the stars align, you get a great VC. You know, it can still be worth it.
Cool. Well, Raj, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Great meeting you all.